Now, collective bargaining is the process in which working people through their unions negotiate contracts with their employers to determine their terms of employment. That would include pay, benefits, hours, leave, job, health and safety policies, ways to balance work and family life, and I guess a whole lot more. But says my guest, Gerhard Papenfus, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the National Employers Association of South Africa. It represents, if I'm not mistaken, well over 1,000 small businesses, particularly in the metals and engineering sector. They're being destroyed by this process of collective bargaining. It's controversial. Let's get into that subject. Gerhard, good evening to you and a very warm welcome. I get the sense that you're both angry and frustrated. So how would you describe the state of collective bargaining in South Africa right now, and particularly, as I mentioned, why it's having a destructive impact on small businesses?
Jeremy, thank you very much for having me. I just want to mention something before I talk about it. NEASA has many more than the 1,600. That the 1,600 is just in the steel industry. We have members in all industries, literally all industries, but 1,600 only in the steel industry. What is the problem with South Africa collective bargaining? It's there's two elements to collective bargaining. There is, in the way it's structured in South Africa, there's the deal and there's the extension of the deal. So if collective bargaining was, in South Africa, was a situation where a group of employers entered into an agreement with a trade union or trade unions, and that agreement applied to those employers who made the deal, we would not have had any problems. But this is the second phase that's the problem. You can go to the minister and ask that that agreement be extended to employers who haven't signed that agreement. And this is typically in the steel industry, the current state of the steel industry, which is industry in absolute free fall. You have a situation where less than 10% of employers have reached deals with trade unions and then extended those deals to non-signatories to those deals. Now, that doesn't only apply to the steel industry, that applies to all industries. But the steel industry has seen the worst of this. So what does it mean? What is the provisions that dictates this extension? What the Labour Relations Act provides for is that when the minister decides whether that deal can be extended to non-signatories to the agreement, he doesn't look at the number of employers who signed those deals, but at the number of employees employed by those employers. So let me use this example. You have 10 employers, each employing 1,000 employees in an industry. They go to the minister and say, we collectively employ 10,000 employees in the industry. What the minister then look at is, does the non-signatories to this agreement employ more employees? Or not only non-signatories, parties involved in the negotiations. Do they represent more than those 10,000? Just based on that example, what you need is, as an example, you need 1,000 employers, each employing 10 employees to counter that. Now, that makes the whole thing lopsided. All
right, so let me ask you this question then, Gerhard, if I can. Are you looking for a revision to the whole process of collective bargaining itself, or do you think the system should be jettisoned completely, given the impact that it can have on small business?
Well, if you have if collective bargaining is not a bad thing, where collective businesses acting together enter into discussions with trade unions on the basis of one business, one vote, and signing an agreement, and it binds you. That agreement binds you. I said that's fantastic. It is the extension of those agreements that's the problem. Now, currently, the problem is that this current situation is entrenched in law, and it protects trade unions. So it's very unlikely that they will change it. So collective bargaining is not the problem. It is the arrangement surrounding the extension of agreements that is the problem.
Right. So, Gerhard, given the importance then of small business to the economy of South Africa, no doubt you have raised these concerns before, I would imagine, both at union forums and with government as well. What sort of response do you get?
Well, as it is, that is not going to change. That will not change. There's too much vested interest in this thing. I mean, trade unions live on this arrangement. They focus focus on big businesses to recruit, and that makes those same big businesses also very vulnerable for strikes. So they force them into lucrative wage deals. While SMME is much more hardened against strike action because they spread all over, that small workforces. The power of trade unions in smaller businesses is very limited. So the whole conspiracy against the, if you can call it that, against SMMEs is, let's focus on the big business, let's get them into a deal and then force you to comply with that deal. What does it mean? Big businesses are situated in the cities, in the metros. But then you say, this deal in the metro, we'll just extend it to the whole of South Africa. Now, the business dynamics of a business, small business in a little town somewhere in a rural area is entirely different from a guy sitting here in the economic hub of Johannesburg, for instance.
So, Gerhard Papenfus, let me ask you then this question. What is your plan, given that the scenario that you paint for me looks like you're on a hiding to nothing?
Well, we just assist business as far as possible to stay clear of this thing through exemption processes. And let me tell you, businesses do not comply. Many of them just don't comply. They cannot. If businesses have complied to the current steel industry, you would have seen a situation far worse than what we're currently having. The steel industry has lost in the last 15 years 37 to 41% of its workforce. Now,
so what you're telling me is that they're breaking the law out of desperation.
Absolutely. What can you do if you can't? The current minimum wage in the steel industry is 59 rand per hour for an entry-level employee, plus a 40% on cost. So the current wage, it costs you to employ a person with no skills, no education, 13,000 rand a month. Now, somebody might say, but that's not a lot of money. Well, if you're an employer, it might be simply unaffordable. So, and if that's the only thing you depend your life depend on, well, you can't pay it. Then you fly under the radar. You just fly under the radar. That's what can you do? So employers do not comply with it, and we assist employers so far as we can. We don't argue. We don't advocate for low wages. We advocate for wages that employers can afford.
All right. Gerhard Papenfus, I am going to leave it there. You do paint a very bleak picture. Chief Executive Officer of the National Employers Association of South Africa. I appreciate your time tonight.